All right, my Fitbit shows 3 o'clock, so we'll get started. Before we start the recording, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. If you have a question, just type it in the chat box. I'll be watching and we'll get your question to the presenter at the end of the presentation. We also, if time allows, we'll leave some time for questions at the end of each of the presentations, so you don't have to wait till the very end. The session is about an hour, so you'll get 1 LEU for today. After the presentation has ended, please stay logged in. I'll be posting a link to an LEU request form. So if you need an LEU for this presentation, you want to make sure you fill out that form. If we have a global sound issue, we'll announce it in the chat box. If you're unable to resolve any individual sound issues you're experiencing, we are recording the webinar and you can watch it online after the presentation has ended. Feel free to send an email to get that link if you don't want to wait for it to be posted on the library's website. Again, if there's a global sound issue, we'll make an announcement in the chat box. All right, and we are recording. Welcome, everyone. We're very glad you could join us today. My name is Susie Hiley, and I'm a member of the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Committee. I'll be the host and question moderator for today's session, Support Staff Stars, presented by Ashley Bartley of the Speedway Public Library, Julie Jolliff of the Union County Public Library, and Sarah Morbitzer, North Manchester Public Library. Just a couple of announcements. To register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the State Library events calendar, which can be found on the website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. The session is about an hour, so you'll have 1 LEU for this. If you're watching an archive recording, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube, or you can find these instructions on the Indiana State Library Continuing Education site under LEU policies. So let's get started with an introduction of our great speakers today. Ashley Barty is an adult and teen services librarian at the Speedway Public Library. Since volunteering there at the age of 12, Ashley has worked a variety of positions while working on her degree, including page, intern, customer service rep, and children's associate. She has worked there for almost 6 years. Julie Jolliff is the director of the Union County Public Library. She has always loved coming to UCPL since she was a little girl and participated in the library's story times and summer reading program. Now she loves sharing that passion with her own children. She is passionate about helping her community. She loves to empower other leaders, dream big ideas, and then push to make those dreams happen. Her goals include making the Union County Public Library the kindest, most helpful, and innovative library in the country. She wants everyone to walk away from UCPL having the best experience and wanting to come back the next day. Sarah Morbitzer began her library career as a 10-year-old volunteer in an original Carnegie Library building. She was hired as a clerk at 14, and since then has held the position of Children's Program Coordinator, Children's Department Assistant, and currently Children's Department Head. One of the most rewarding aspects of her job is helping to position the library as a community center. More than a place to simply borrow books, the library is a second home for children of working parents, summer vacation for families who aren't able to travel, building where young volunteers discover a sense of purpose, a gathering place for kids and teens to make new friends, a networking hub for new parents, and so much more. In her spare time, Sarah enjoys trying out new recipes from library cookbooks, listening to books on her e-reader, and taking her 4-year-old son to the lake. Without further ado, I will now turn the presentation over to Ashley, Julie, and Sarah.
Hi everyone, as she said, my name is Ashley Bartley, and I have been the adult and teen librarian at the Speedway Public Library for the past almost 6 years. I basically grew up in my hometown library, and I don't think there was really any other path for me to go on. So I am titling my segment as Reevaluating Your Virtual Presence When the Real World Stops. So one little part about Speedway, you might recognize the name. We are about 2 blocks from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're on the west side. of Central Indiana, basically right in the middle of the Indianapolis public library system. But we're our own little library. We are also very small. Speedway is a very small town. When it comes to librarians, other than the director, for most of this period, it has been just me and the children's librarian. And until the pandemic happened, we really thought that we were doing a great job with our virtual presence. We thought we were, promoting our programs. We were, making sure that we were always up to date with closings. And COVID really made us look at that in a whole different light. And we had to really rethink everything that we were doing. We'll go to the next slide, please. So first thing is, when everything happened, we needed to figure out what to do. And we had to really look at how we knew our patrons and what we thought they were going to want to do. Next, please. So first thing was accessibility during the lockdown. Did our patrons want to participate on things during, with Zoom? Were they not going to want Zoom? And a lot of the patrons that come in, we have a lot of young families, but we also have a lot of senior citizens. So we initially attempted to do a Zoom program. We tried to do one of our book discussions with it, and it became very clear that that was not wanted. We tried a children's program. It was not wanted. So we decided to completely forego trying to do Zoom programs. We got more participation and more response by doing just videos, uploading videos. And then of course, later on our take and makes and things like that. So with COVID first happening, when those 2 weeks hit, and we really thought that, oh, this is just going to be 2 weeks and everything's going to go back to normal. Of course, it didn't. And we remained at home for another month. So during the whole month of April, we were really struggling trying to figure out what to put out. We're a library that's really big on crafting. So we really started to do programs that were crafts that you could do at home, things you already had. That way people didn't have to go out to the stores. So it was simple things like making paper bead bracelets with, magazine paper and glue. I did a video on, basic crocheting, how to do a single, chain and single crochet stitch, double crochet stitch, how to do origami lucky stars. We also really heavily promoted our digital resources, things like, Hoopla, Gale, Libby, Overdrive, Google Docs. I was doing, how to do a resume on Google Docs or just how to navigate it in general. And myself and the children's librarian ended up just making a calendar of, okay, you're going to post something on this day. I'll do something this day. And we tried to have it to where we were posting something at least 2 to 3 times a week. And we realized that, that was way more than we had ever posted. And it was kind of crazy, but we realized if we didn't do that, our patrons, I don't want to say would forget about us, but they would, we would kind of fall into the background. And that's the last thing we wanted to do. So we really, really took a look at our social media presence and tried to figure out how we could do better, how we could stay on top of it and continue to be in our patrons' minds. We can go to the next slide, please. So with that, we also realized that while we had a Twitter page and we had an Instagram page, we also weren't really using it almost at all. I realized we had over 100 followers on Instagram and hadn't posted anything in like a year and a half. So to be able to do better and, promote our stuff on all 3 of the services that we had, we ended up looking at into a social media manager. So we went ahead and went with Hootsuite, which has both a free and paid accounts. With the free one, you're able to post up or schedule up to 30 posts in advance, which for us initially worked great. That meant we were able to have 10 different posts on all 3 pages. So that made 30 total that we could have scheduled. Moving on, we ended up having, oh, sorry, not on the slide. Moving like farther into the year, we ended up actually paying for the Hootsuite account because our friends group wanted a little bit more of a presence. And in order to have their program or their events scheduled in advance along with ours, it just made more sense for us to have more options for that. And we went ahead with the paid one. The other thing we started doing was TikTok, because initially it was, we need to get our teens. We feel like they were the group that, even though we were on social media now, we weren't really reaching them. I don't know if they just don't like our page on Facebook or Instagram or what it was. So we tried doing something new and we started doing TikTok. I am proud to say that we are now almost at 300 followers. And I'm very, very happy with that. But I don't know if they're still reaching them, but we're trying. All right, next page, please. The other thing we needed to look at is how we were going to be doing this filming. All of these programs that we were going to be doing, where were we doing them and how? Next, please. So we needed to create a space. The things we needed to look at were the location, how we were doing it, what kind of device we were on, and how we were going to edit them. So with the location, we needed somewhere that was quiet, that we were able to have, a big enough space to where we could, film, top half, up, have enough space on the sides, but also have enough space in front of us. That way we could actually, film the craft as we were making it. And then also having a background. So we initially just started with a simple green screen that we just tacked to a board. And we jumped into our activity room that was being used for storage at the time. And that was it. And after the slide, I'll show you that. But with the filming device, I personally chose to use my own phone. Part of that was because if I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get my video edited by the end of the day, I was going to be able to take it home and quickly get it, edited before I needed to post it. So I liked having the kind of flexibility of having it on my phone. My coworker, she preferred to use the camera that we had already, and then she ended up editing using the computer. For me with editing, I used an app called KeenMaster. It did cost, I think it was $22 for the year. But again, because it was an app that was on my cell phone, it made it so much easier to be able to just, edit on the go. I really, really liked having everything at my fingertips. I found it to be a lot more, easier to use. I tried using the open source software that my coworker was using on the computer. I believe she was using one called OpenShot. And I didn't find it as easy to use. Also, if you're using like a green screen because you're wanting, different backgrounds, the KeenMaster app that I was using, it made it so simple. All you had to do was, turn it on, click on it, and it immediately made your background whatever it was that you were, wanting your background to be. Whereas with the software on the computer, as well as I tried using another one as well, it had too many spaces, like it wasn't capturing the light and the dark, and you'd end up still having little splotches. So I really liked the app that I used, but again, it did cost. So I know it's not KeenMaster. It's the bottom, very last word, KINEMASTER. Yeah, I think it's KeenMaster. All right. And if you see the little image there, that's what it looked like on my phone. So everything right there, easy to use. All right, next. So this right here, this is what our space ended up being. So we had some light boxes that we had been using for, I did a Christmas photo type program where I invited families to come in and take Christmas photos 2 years ago. And so we had these on hand. So we were able to plug them in, have some nice, soft floor faces. And then we bought a backdrop stand. That way in the future, when we end up needing to use this activity room, as a programming room again, we can move that background to a different space. But how I was saying, all you really need for a location is quiet background and a good place to put it. The next picture shows what the rest of the room looks like. So as I said, our activity room is currently being used for storage. So like I said, you can make a filming area wherever you need. You just have to have just that clear space right there in front of you. All right, you wouldn't mind going to the next one, please? So the next thing we need to look at is using our skills. With everyone going virtual, and there were some virtual presenters that were really, they were costing money, and we were also trying to look into spending money in other areas. So we were trying to figure out what kind of programs we could do on our own, much like we would with regular programming. What can we do without having to spend money? Next, please. So once we came back to the library, we were still closed for about a month and a half. So we were looking at, how can we be engaging during curbside? We want our patrons to know that we're here, even though they can't come in. How can we, try to get them to come in? And the first thing I did was I started doing book talks. So once a week, I would post a video that just showed some of the new books that we had just processed. I would do some for the adults, some for the teens, and basically it was just reading a small summary about the books. They weren't huge, long book talks. They were just, quick blurbs to try to entice them to, try to check the book out. And then also our crafts, they became more involved. So we were looking at doing less of what do you have at home and more of what could you very easily, quickly run into the store and grab. So we were looking at doing things like Mod Podge candles, where we just took, a napkin, wrapped it around the edge of a candle and put Mod Podge over it to create a design. I did a basic embroidery, which I then later on used for a take and make, for making a unicorn face take and make. Things like paint par paintings and foldable photo albums, things that were just a little bit more involved, required just a little bit more than what you may have at home. Right, if we continue. So here we were, this was middle of June, and we're like, oh, well, come fall, we'll probably be able to do programming again. It'll be, we'll be back to normal. Well, obviously that did not happen. So we had to get even more creative. What else can we do? And one of the things I realized was people really, really like true crime right now. That's a huge genre that people are flocking to. And so I started doing live streaming. I would pick a story, and 9 o'clock on Saturday night, I would go live on Facebook and tell a story. And I did that through the month of August. And then September, I said, let's change it up. Let's do history. And so I did some historical stories, like, Roanoke, how it's not actually lost. They actually kind of figured out where they went. And then obviously for October, I went into scary stories, and I did stories that weren't like had full conclusions. They're more of, what do you really think, or how does it make you feel type stories. And our patrons responded really well to them. So I was very happy with that. And then also, once fall started, we also started doing take and make crafts like a lot of other libraries. For the adults and teens, I tried to do every other week with a new set of crafts. And then we also did videos that went along with them. That way the patrons could actually play the video, have the craft in front of them, and kind of make it feel like it was our usual in-person, craft. And we had usually them for all ages. So we had a kids craft, we had a teen craft, and we had an adult craft. We also, as I was saying, looked more into our shareable skills. I lived in Japan for a short while, and I took Japanese. And so I did a beginning Japanese course where I taught the basic kana, the hiragana and katakana. And I did, greetings, the pronunciations, and I am still getting likes notifications. Someone shared it on the other side of the world, and I'm like, okay, that person is in India. That person is in Southeast Asia. It's kind of interesting, but that one became really, really popular. I also just did a fun Halloween cocktails video. That one I was not, of course, allowed to drink them on camera, but it was kind of fun just doing something different that I couldn't, I would not have been allowed to do that in the library as an in-person program because, we can't do alcohol. But I was able to do that as a virtual program. So that was kind of fun. I also have a friend, old teacher who writes romance novels. And I reached out to her and was able to get her to make a video for us. So it was really just figuring out what else we really knew, what we could do. But yeah, so we can go to the last one, please. So with all this, our overall outcomes were that people were watching these videos and participating and commenting more than we initially thought they would. We thought, we're going to post these, we're going to get, 3 people watching it or something. And it was more than that. We averaged about anywhere from 40 to 80 views on average for our programming. And we were really happy with that. It also gave us a better understanding of what we weren't doing previously. Like I said, it was just us 2 librarians for the most part. We now have a 3rd librarian for outreach, but that was a new position that was just recently created. But initially it was just the 2 of us and we thought we were doing great. And now we realize that we really need to be on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter more than we were because that's where a lot of our patrons are. That's where they're getting some of their information from. And we were able to, reach our patrons during this stressful time, especially, like I said, with the take and makes, they flocked to that. And being able to have those videos that were instructional for them to watch really, really helped, and they really appreciated that. But that is my presentation. So thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, and we'll move on now to Julie. And if you still have a question for Ashley and we have time at the end, when you think of something else, you'll have an opportunity for that. So now let's hear from Julie. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Julie Jolliff. This is me with my family here, my husband, Mike, and 2 kids. I am the director of the Union County Public Library, but I have been a library fan since being a little girl. And I went into teaching right out of school, and I loved that. And then have just recently joined Library World in 2019 as the children's programmer here. And then in 2020 became the director. So my experience is with leading has really only been through 2020. So it's just been a learning curve straight up. My presentation is called Know What You're For, and we're going to pick that apart a little bit. I know we were going to focus on some unique programming and cool things, and we're going to definitely get to that. But as a leader within our library and along with our staff, we have really figured out that in order to get to those unique ideas and unique programs, we had to build some steps to get there. And we're going to go through a couple of those steps. And at the end, I'll tell you some of the cool things that we've been able to do. And I love just like listening to Ashley and seeing what they've done. And hopefully you can glean a little bit from us too. So if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. When we're talking about what we want to be known for, the first thing that I really want to impress on people is that you have to be a raving fan. I think in the past, we've talked a lot about, we want everyone to like us. We want everyone to like the library. The library is fun. But when 2020 hit, we really wanted to flip the script and talk about how can we show the community that we are a raving fan for them. I think we've all been at sporting events and seen people like in this picture, they just love anything that happens out on the field or court. My husband's a big Bengals fan, and back in his prime, he would have been one of these people screaming with his face painted up. And he was just the biggest fan, and whether they win or they lost, he was always there to cheer them on. So when we flip that script and we talk about, okay, well, now we want to be a raving fan for our community, what does that actually mean? And we can talk about that at the next slide. So being a raving fan for our community is just, it's very simple. It's genuinely wanting those people that come through the doors or that live and are our neighbors, we want them to reach their highest potential. I got a lot of these ideas that seem pretty simple, but to us have meant so much. With this book that's pictured down in the corner by Jeff Henderson, Know What You're For. I actually had the privilege to read this book a week before I even knew what the word COVID meant. It was early March. I had heard of Jeff just on some different platforms. I had heard him speak on, and I got his book and I read it. And I will just clearly remember the day that we closed our doors for months, standing in front of our staff and saying, okay, I've read this book. It all seems to make sense. And we're going to try to apply the strategies in this to see if we can reach our community, because we're getting ready to get into something that we've never done before. So Jeff really talks about knowing what you're for. And the first thing that he talks about is being that raving fan. So if we can go to the next slide. So, okay, so how do we show ways to be a raving fan at a library? And, being a raving fan of our community is just simply that, being that person that cheers them on, whether they are patrons or not. And that's the thing I think is really important is the library can be a raving fan of anybody in our community, whether they've never stepped in the door. Actually, I think that's even more important. But one of the ways that we can be a raving fan is just being personable. One of my goals and pet projects is to work more on taking newspaper clippings every week, and to get our weekly newspaper, to photocopy it. And when I see a kiddo that has scored or did a great job in track, to cut that out, either just send it to the school, or if I can find their address, send it to them and, say, hey, we saw that you got first place in that track meet. Way to go. The library's super proud of you. And, you don't even have to say, hope you come in sometime. Just say, hey, we're proud of you. And I know, I have young kids that if someone sent me, and actually I've had it done before, that, someone has sent me a clipping of my kids were into 4-H. They've sent that to me in the mail and said, hey, we saw your kids in the paper. That's really cool. My kids felt like they were on cloud 9. And as a parent, I went, wow, I can't believe someone took the time to cut that out, to put it in a card, to put it in the mail. So all of this to say, being personable counts. Another thing that we talk about all the time with our staff, because our number one value is we're for the community, is going the extra mile. We just used this example this week during our staff meeting is, I overheard a older adult saying, she just was having a hard time finding a family doctor. And, that is a perfect opportunity. She's just making chit chat. But when she leaves, she checks out her book or whatever, to follow up on that and say, give her a call later and say, hey, I don't have a personal experience with these doctors, but I did a quick Google search and, there's 4 doctors within a 20-mile radius that, and here's their number. If you might want to follow up with them, things like that. And I challenge every person on our staff to do that. Our young adult staff, the staff that's been here for a long time, everybody, listen to what that patron is really saying. And there's always an opportunity to help. And another part of being a raving fan is simply just service. It amazes me how much opening a door for somebody can really mean. I put this on myself and ask of my staff that when we cross by the door where patrons enter, to run out a little bit before they get there and just open it for them and say, hey, welcome to the library. We're glad you're here. Some people are almost like, okay, thanks. But honestly, it makes such an impact. And I know when those things happen to me, I remember it throughout the day. we had an experience a couple weeks ago with back to school where we had a lady came and she was really down on her luck. Her grandson had outgrown all of his clothes. He was trying to get back, starting back to school. They'd missed some of the resources that were available. And we just went the extra mile. And that is thanks to our staff that does these things. And with my encouragement, and I try to do things as well with them, but they went and they found some resources and were able to secure some clothes. And that grandma has been in almost daily ever since. And the other day she stopped by my office and said, I'm sorry I'm here every day. And I said, oh my gosh, that's no problem. I want you here. And she goes, you guys are just so nice. And, it's not ever going to prove in a statistic anywhere, but it means a lot to people. So being a raving fan is always my number one step when you need to think about how to create some unique programming. Next slide, please. My second point is simply called fill a hole, make a basket. And I'll backtrack a little bit. I used to play basketball and we were honestly a horrible team. We couldn't win a game for nothing. But our coach one time, he called a timeout and he just said, okay, ladies, like everything that you're doing honestly is not working. The other team is just that much better than us. And, we all kind of hung our heads and said, yeah, we know we're not very good. And he said, here's what I want you to do. Forget the plays, forget, all the things that we had practiced. I want you just to move to an open spot on the court. And when you move to that open spot, I want whoever has the ball to throw it to that person. And then that person shoot, put it in the basket. And that made such a huge impression on me about when we can fill a hole. And I mean that within our community, we make a basket every time. So if we can go on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what does that mean. So during 2020, and even before that and currently, we keep looking and going, where's the holes? Where in our community is there something amiss? And then we take that and we go, okay, well, how can we help? For example, real quick, our preschools got shut down during 2020 completely. There was nothing. And I'm the mother of preschoolers, and I was like, this is horrible. This is a huge hole in our community. These kids, preschool education is so important. So we took that hole and we said, okay, what can we do to help? Totally unconventional, never had done it before, but we made preschool packets that could be picked up curbside, and we made them fit a curriculum. Granted, my background is in teaching, but we went through some preschool standards, made some themes, and we made monthly curriculums that could be picked up once a month. And we made a private preschool group where parents could take pictures of them doing their activities. But it was simply finding a hole, and we made a basket every time. So that was really, really fun experience. Okay. On our third slide is I just want to tell you a little bit more about our baskets. And it's not that our baskets are any better than anything else. It's just these were things that worked in our holes. And I just love hearing other people's baskets. So if we can go to that next slide. One of the things that we did was loads of love. And that's, I didn't have a good picture for that, but that's one of our graphics in the bottom left-hand corner that we use for promotion. That simply developed out of one of our board members going to the laundromat to wash some bedding or something. And she came back and she said, I can't believe how expensive it is to wash, get those big washers to do bedding. She said, that is just really, really hard. And it made me think back to when I was teaching school and some of the issues we'd had with kids and clothes. So we figured out how to do a program called Loads of Love. We just developed it on our own. We talked to our local laundromat and we asked them if we could sponsor days, and we would pay for people's washers and dryers. And we had volunteers that would come up and our board would come up. And we sent out some donation request letters through our friends. And we had people that gave, I just can't even believe the amount of money that they gave just to help people do their laundry. So every other Wednesday we would go and put in quarters and for washers and dryers, but we also brought baskets of books. We brought program calendars. We brought pamphlets to talk about, that we have free Wi-Fi and all these different things. It was an amazing experience. It became like a little family. Now through COVID, we've changed it a little bit. We've adapted and modified just because, we just didn't really want to trap a whole lot of people in at one time, but the framework's still the same. But it's just an amazing, amazing thing. The second thing listed was parking lot bingo, which down in the right-hand corner is a gentleman outside doing parking lot bingo. There's a huge parking lot across from our library, and it's simply that. We play bingo in the parking lot. I spoke to you a little bit about our preschool package. That was super fun. The fourth thing we did, we realized that story time was really, really hard to do in our space, right in the thick of COVID. And I remember one day we just said, okay, if we can't do story time here, we'll just go to them. And this is a picture of actually at my sister-in-law's house where we took our staff and we just went and had story time outside. We did story time home edition. It was super fun. The fifth point is senior surprise. We had our senior citizens are a really important part of our library. They would drive through once a month and just get a surprise. We'd get like a homemade brownie in there for them. We would add coloring books in the middle of winter. We'd have crafts, anything to keep them busy. And then we also realized that food scarcity was a big hole in our community that no one else was serving. So we wrote grants to serve breakfast and lunch during all summer and school breaks. And here's the coolest thing. We were cooking all of that before, and it took a ton of time. We actually hired a cafeteria worker to come and work during summer and breaks. She has tons of skills, knows about food preparation, and was just a huge, huge thing that we were able to do and made an amazing impact with our community. So the next slide, I just simply want to say thank you. I can't wait to hear about how you can show your community that you're for them in a unique way. It won't be the same way as we did, but we're always looking for those holes. And I just want to encourage you to look as well. So we're just cheering you on with anything that you have going with your community. Thank you, everybody.
Does anybody have any questions for Julie? Those were amazing. You did a lot of things I've never heard a library doing before.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we have more things coming down the pike.
Well, once again, if we have time at the end and you think of a question for Julie, you will be able to ask then. This was great. I've taken a lot of notes. All right, and we will move on now to Sarah.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love all of these ideas. I'm definitely going to have to steal some of this. I just love the creativity, especially when you get librarians together and they can start sharing their stories, sharing their ideas. Every single time I come away with something that just amazes me and blows me away and inspires me to do more too. So thank you for sharing, both of you. I enjoyed it so much. I'm here to share my story of an accessible, affordable, timely playground dream come true. And if you want to go ahead and switch to the next slide and start playing the video, that'll be great. In May of this year, our 6-feature flat playground was installed on the main walkway at our library. So as people walk down Market Street, they're met by an 8-piece activity track, which encourages them to turn down our walkway and jump, skip, spin, and run. At the midway point of the activity track, Foursquare comes into sight, followed by a standing lawn jump, darts, twister, and finally, at the doors of the library, a giant snakes and ladders board game. The installation was the culmination of 2 years of dreaming and searching. Shortly after I took the position of the children's department head at our library, I watched an Indiana State Library webinar by Kokomo Howard Public Library. Their Outdoor Explorer classroom blew me away, and I knew I wanted to get something like that for our library. We can go ahead and go back to the slides now.
All right.
So my biggest challenge to realizing that dream is one shared by all librarians, and that's money. NMPL is located in a town of just over 6,000 people. Our community is surrounded by rural farmland, townships, and even tinier towns than ours. In addition to the cost of the playground space itself, I knew I would also have to take into consideration the expenses of maintenance, repairs in case of vandalism, and potentially even increased insurance, depending on what type of features were installed. With the majority of local businesses already making annual donations to our summer reading program, I just couldn't see where the funds would come from, so I put the idea on the back burner. Next slide. One day I was talking with Heidi Lovett, our programming coordinator, about my wish for an outdoor play space. We were several months into the first lockdown at that point and really feeling the strain of only connecting with our patrons virtually. Looking ahead to the future, we knew outdoor spaces would have to play a huge role in eventual reopenings. And she started telling me about how much fun she had as a child at her school's playground. She said the majority of her recess time was spent playing in a house outline that had been painted on the blacktop. She said she would often go home and use chalk to draw her own house on her sidewalk. That was my light bulb moment. What if instead of a three-dimensional playground space, which would require a substantial financial and time investment, likely years in the making, we can make a flat playground at our library? We kicked around the ideas of chalk drawings, too temporary, and paint, a little dicey as to final results, even with our artistic skills. While we didn't come up with any solutions in that conversation, it did give me the parameters for an internet search. And I went on Pinterest, which we all know and love, and I eventually discovered playground markings, and I knew I had my answer, or at least I hoped I did. Next slide. I discovered that there were a number of companies in Europe that install playground markings in schools and public spaces using materials similar to those used to create crosswalk markings in our streets here in the US. Eventually, I did find two companies here in the US that provide these services, as well as one that had paint and stencil markings, and a throwback to one of our original ideas. With increasing excitement, I reached out to these companies and began discussing logistics, cost, durability, longevity, designs, and more. During a summer of so many restrictions and limits, it was a breath of fresh air to dream big and imagine possibilities for an outdoor space that would be completely unique in our community. With the help of our friends at the library, several memorial funds, and monies from our Color Run fundraiser, we had enough to get our playground. Something that could have taken years to achieve became possible start to finish in less than a year's time. EduMarking USA came and installed our flat playground in the course of one day. And another benefit of this type of play space was no ongoing construction for days or weeks. We started seeing benefits right away. Next screen. First was in the area of families and intergenerational. Families were coming after hours to play snakes and ladders or darts. It was making our library a habitual destination even when we were closed. We saw lots of intergenerational play with grandparents, adults, teens, school kids, and babies all interacting within this space. Some of these individuals didn't even know each other until a pickup game of Foursquare or a friendly lawn jump competition brought them into contact. One of my favorite sites is we've got this one teen who comes into the library who's well over 6 feet tall. And I'll see him out there playing Foursquare, and there's a little like 4 foot tall elementary kid, and then there's maybe a preschool or kindergarten age kid. And the height difference is just hilarious to see this really tall kid and these short kids, but they're all having fun playing Foursquare together. It's the best. Library usage was another benefit. Out-of-town visitors were brought by their family to see the flat playground when they took them around to see the sites in North Manchester. And of course, they had to stay and play, and then they had to come inside and check out our library, which we always love. A father and son read about the flat playground in the paper and came to see it, and the little boy ended up getting his first library card. Time and time again, community members, some of whom weren't even or hadn't even been regular library users, thanked us for bringing the flat playground to our community. They would stop us when we were out and about in town getting groceries, post office, whatever, and just tell us how great it was. Behavior was another benefit we saw. A rowdy group of kids could be redirected to the flat playground and return inside even just a short 15 minutes later in a much calmer frame of mind. We saw a drop in behavior problems with the advent of the flat playground. Going outside to blow off steam, and it was usually voluntary, worked wonders for us. Our clerks kept commenting on how well behaved our more difficult kiddos were this summer. We would usually have, over the course of a summer, several incident reports we'd have to write up involving kids or teens. We didn't have any this year. Outdoor programming became even more fun with the flat playground. Kids were able to initiate their own play and games while waiting their turn for various activities. So we had large turnouts for outdoor events. No one was left waiting, bored, losing interest. There was always something for them to do. I also noticed that it helped keep kids in the groove even when they needed out. Sometimes little ones would lose interest or older ones would feel overwhelmed. Instead of leaving like they had in the past, they stayed and played on the playground, and then they worked their way back into the scheduled activity as they were ready. Sales was another thing, strangely enough. At our little bookshop event, shoppers stayed for an hour or more as their kids played. While the kids twisted and spun and jumped and ran, caregivers enjoyed reading their new books or buying more. One woman came back to the checkout table 4 times because she kept finding more books to buy while her kids were engrossed with the playground. Social workers and tutors raved to us about what a difference it has made in their sessions with kids. They use the various features for brain breaks from tutoring and to help kids improve sensory and vestibular processing and integration. Publicity has been fantastic around it for media. The Wednesday Word featured us, local newspapers have featured us, Edumarking has featured us multiple times on their Facebook and Instagram accounts. And we get people around town, as I mentioned before, stopping us and saying, "You're doing such an amazing job. This library is incredible." It really raised our profile in the local community. Last but not least, physical activity. Kids who used to spend hours on our computer were taking numerous breaks to go outside and play Foursquare or compete in the lawn jump. And they weren't doing this because we were telling them to, they were doing it because they wanted to. Next slide. So now that I've told you about how it all came about and how great the finished results were, I want to provide you with a few details that may be useful if you are looking into a similar project for your library. First, the cost. According to the Kokomo Howard Public Library website, the Outdoor Explore Garden was made possible with grants and donations totaling more than $48,000. And obviously their outdoor play space is incredible and extensive, and we can't begin to compare it with the flat playground. But as I've mentioned, we've seen numerous benefits for the library and our community, and we were able to do it all for just over $10,000. We were thrilled to have an option and a timeline that fit our small town library. Second, what are the markings exactly? The markings are made of non-toxic thermoplastic and they're heat treated to bond to the sidewalk. It was so cool to watch the install. The surface is non-skid even when it's wet, and the layout, the design, the materials all combine to make it accessible. A wheelchair user can play on this playground. And thanks to the slightly raised and gritty surface of the markings, as well as their size, even those with limited vision could join in a round of Twister. No new construction was necessary because Edumarking was able to use our existing sidewalk, but they can also do blacktop, pavement, or concrete. This also helped us save money. Third, running the playground. It has required very little work on our part. We keep a container in the children's department filled with spinners, balls, jumbo dice, bean bags, and laminated game instructions. Users can come in during hours and ask for the equipment when they're done or they're ready to switch to a new game. Many times, even when we're open, the playground users don't even ask for equipment. We'll see a mom sitting on a bench calling out random combinations of right hand red, left foot yellow, while a group of kids play Twister. Or a family will use an app to roll dice for snakes and ladders, with the players acting as living game markers as they progress up the board. One family told us they sewed their own bean bags to play beans a week after we were closed. It's been such a great experience. It's really done a lot for our community. And I just am so grateful that I got the chance to share that with you. If you had any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them now.
That is gorgeous.
It makes for really great pictures, that's for sure.
Does anybody have questions for anybody? Or ideas that you would like to share that this made you think of? I will be posting the link for the LEUs in just a moment. Make sure you can get their names and emails down. Wonderful ideas. All right. I will get the link here for you.
That would be awesome, Ginger. They can fit it anywhere, and they've got all kinds of packaging sizes. So we did 6 features, but they've got a lot more than that available. And you can also do fewer than that. And I'm happy to share my own personal research with anyone who is interested, when I compared the 2 companies I found here in the US, compared their warranty plans and things like that, as well as information about the place that provides stencils and paint. So if anyone's interested in anything like that, feel free to just send me an email. I'm happy to pass that information on.
Is there anything anybody would like to see again? This recording will be available.
Hi, this is Lisa from the State Library. Can I stop the recording now?
I believe you can.
Okay, thank you.